wind changed first. It came down off the mesa, smelling of copper and wet stone, wrong for a dry October night. And every dog in the valley went quiet at once. Not calm, just quiet. The way a thing goes quiet when it knows better than to be heard. Coyotes that had been yapping in the arroyo since sundown cut off mid-cry. Cattle bunched tight against a fence line for no reason a rancher could name. Somewhere past the ridge, an owl left its perch and did not call again. Under that wrongness, a wagon moved without lantern light, wheels wrapped in burlap to soften the sound, cutting across dry grass toward a barn with its doors already open. A man stood in that doorway with a coin purse in his fist and his heart going too fast for a man just standing still. $10, he said. That's all I've got. That won't be missed. The answer came low, almost a whisper. It isn't the money we need tonight. Elias Ward had built his barn with his own hands 9 years back, and in 9 years it had held hay, horses, a stillborn calf he'd buried before his wife could see it, and nothing else that required silence. Tonight it held 4 people who were not supposed to exist in Socorro County anymore, according to the paper the Army had signed and the newspapers had printed, and the men who rode the roads at night had taken as gospel. He hadn't planned on this. He'd planned on selling his wool clip, mending the west fence, and getting old on land that had never asked him for anything harder than weather. But an hour before dusk, a boy no older than 12 had come stumbling out of the cottonwoods behind his well, bleeding from a graze along his ribs, and behind the boy had come his mother, and behind her an old man who could barely stand, and behind all of them, 3 miles off in closing, the dust of men who called themselves a posse and were, in truth, something closer to a hunting party with a bounty attached to it. Elias had not asked their names. He'd asked one question. Can you make it to the barn before they crest that hill? And when the answer was fast, silent nod, that had been enough. Now the coin purse felt foolish in his hand. $10 was nothing. $10 wouldn't buy a man's silence if the posse came knocking, and both of them knew it. Elias and the old man standing just inside the barn door, upright despite everything, one hand pressed flat against a support beam like he was steadying the whole structure through will alone. Keep your money, the old man said again, softer this time. What you're doing costs you enough already. They'll search every barn between here and the Rio, Elias said. I need somewhere better than a barn. There's nowhere better than a barn tonight. The old man's eyes moved past Elias, out toward the tree line, toward the ridge, toward something Elias couldn't see and didn't yet understand he should be afraid of. There are worse things riding tonight than the men chasing us. The wind already told you that. You felt it change. Elias had felt it. He didn't say so. He worked fast after that, burying the wagon tracks under scattered straw, running a rake through the yard dirt, walking the boy and his mother back into the deepest corner of the loft, where the shadows pooled thickest. The old man refused the loft. He said his knees wouldn't carry him up the ladder fast if fast was needed, and something in the way he said if fast was needed made Elias's stomach turn cold. The posse arrived 40 minutes later. 6 men, torches instead of lanterns. A leader named Hollis Bragg, who Elias had shared whiskey with twice and trusted the way a man trusts anyone he's never needed anything from. Bragg didn't dismount. You seen an Apache family come through here, Ward? Woman, boy, old man, there's money on 'em. Seen nothing but my own fence line all evening. Bragg's eyes went to the barn, held there a beat too long. Mind if we look? Look where you like. Elias's voice didn't shake. He was surprised by that, distantly, the way a man is surprised by his own hands staying steady around a rattlesnake. Wasted trip, though. I'd have shot at anything moving through here after dark. Wool's been bad this month. That last part wasn't a lie, exactly. It was the truest thing he'd said all night, and he wouldn't understand how true until 3 nights later, when the wind changed again and something came down off that same ridge that no rifle, no fence, and no $10 coin purse was going to stop. Bragg's men searched the barn with their torches held high, boots scattering the straw Elias had raked so carefully, and found nothing but hay bales and a nervous horse. When they rode off toward the Salinas place, Elias stood in his own doorway for a long moment before he trusted his legs to carry him back inside. The old man was watching him when he turned around, not with gratitude, with something closer to appraisal, the look of a man deciding whether a stranger has earned the right to know what's actually coming for all of them. "You have a good barn," the old man said finally. "Won't matter in 3 days." "Why not?" The old man didn't answer. He looked instead toward the loft, where the boy had finally stopped shaking. And outside, far off but not far enough, something howled once, low and wrong, in a register no coyote had ever managed. Sleep didn't come. Elias sat at his kitchen table until the candle burned low, listening to the house settle and the wind worry at the shutters. And when the old man's silhouette appeared in the doorway near midnight, Elias wasn't surprised. He'd been waiting for it. "Your family's asleep?" "The boy is, his mother won't be, not tonight." The old man lowered himself into the chair across the table, slow, careful, like every joint had a separate opinion about the movement. Up close in candlelight, Elias could see how old he actually was. Older than the moon, it seemed, older than the ridge outside. "You want to know why a barn won't be enough? I want to know what's out there." The old man was quiet long enough that Elias thought he wouldn't answer at all. Then, "My son." 2 words. Elias waited for more, and when none came, he understood this was a man doling out truth the way a starving man doles out bread, in pieces small enough to survive the giving. "He rode with us 3 years back before the soldiers, before the treaty that wasn't worth the paper. There was a night in the Chiricahuas, a place we shouldn't have camped, ground that wasn't ours to sleep on. Something came through that camp, and it didn't kill clean. It bit, and it left, like it wasn't hungry so much as it was choosing." The old man's hands, folded on the table, tightened once. "My son didn't die from the wound. He died from what came after. 3 weeks later, under a full moon. He wasn't my son's shape anymore." "You're telling me the thing that's out there tonight is—" "Was. Once." The old man's eyes came up, and there was no performance in them, no grief theater. Just a fact he'd carried so long. It had worn smooth like riverstone. "He doesn't hunt like a man remembers being hunted. He doesn't choose targets the way Bragg's posse chooses targets. He follows fear. He follows blood spilled recent. And there is a great deal of both on this land tonight, Mr. Ward, because of what you did for us." Elias felt something drop through his chest. "You brought this here. I brought a warning here. It was already coming." The old man leaned forward, and for the first time his voice lost its careful evenness. "I have spent 3 years staying ahead of my own son. I know the shape of the ground he prefers, the distance he keeps, the nights he grows bold. 3 days from now the moon is full. If we are still on your land when it rises, it will not matter what you told Bragg's men. It will not matter that your rifle is loaded. He does not fear iron the way a wolf fears iron. Then why stay? Why not run tonight? Because my grandson can't run 3 days on a torn leg, and because if my son finds him first, finds the boy who still smells like family to whatever's left of him in there, I don't know what happens. I've never tested that. I have prayed never to test that." Outside, the wind shifted again, and this time Elias heard it too. Not a howl, not yet, but something under the ordinary night sounds, a wrongness moving patient and unhurried along the tree line, like it knew exactly how much time it had. If this story's got its hooks in you already, this is the part where I'd ask you to hit subscribe, because where this goes next, you're not going to want to miss it. The old man rose from the table like the conversation had cost him something physical. 3 days, he said again. That's what we have to either move them somewhere safer or find a way to end this before the moon does. End it how? You said iron doesn't stop him. For the first time since he'd stepped through Elias's door, the old man almost smiled. Thin, joyless, the expression of a man who had made peace with an impossible math years ago. There is one thing that stops him. I have carried it since the night he was bitten, hoping I would never need it, and dreading the night I would. He reached into his coat and set something on the table between them. Small, dark, unassuming, the kind of object a man might walk past 100 times without a second look. Elias stared at it a long moment before he understood what he was looking at, and understood, too, that the next 3 days were going to decide which of them buried the other. The object on the table was a knife, or had been once. Its blade was short, no longer than a hand's width, forged from something darker than any iron Elias had worked with. Silver, but wrong somehow. The metal shot through with veins of a deeper black, like it had been poured and cooled around something that resisted becoming ordinary steel. "My son's mother made this," the old man said. "Before any of this, before the bite. She had a gift for working metal that came from her grandmother and her grandmother before her, and she made this blade the year our son was born, not knowing what it would someday be for. There's a belief, old even then, that a blade forged by a mother's hand can undo what her child becomes if it's ever needed. You said it stops him how? Not by killing him outright, by cutting the curse loose from the man underneath, if there's enough of the man left to save. But the blade alone isn't enough anymore." The old man's jaw tightened. "It needs to be blooded first, by something that matters to him, something that was his before the change. I buried a piece of that with his mother 3 years back, thinking I'd never need to dig it up again." "Where?" 2 days' ride, a canyon south of here, near water that doesn't freeze even in winter. If we leave before dawn, we can be there and back before the moon's fully round." Elias looked toward the loft, where the boy slept fitfully and his mother sat sentinel beside him, and understood with the particular clarity of a man who has already decided something before admitting it to himself, that he was not going to let an old man ride into werewolf country alone. "I'm not asking you to come," the old man said, reading it off his face anyway. "Didn't say you were." They left an hour before first light, Elias's rifle across his saddle and the strange blade wrapped in cloth inside his coat, and the ride south was quiet in the particular way of men who understand that talking invites the wrong kind of attention. The land changed as they went, grass giving way to rock, rock giving way to canyon walls that swallowed sound and sunlight both, until by midday they moved through shadows so complete it felt like evening had come early just for them. "He's been through here," the old man said, reining up beside a cottonwood with bark stripped raw. Along one side, claw marks gouged 4 feet up the trunk in parallel lines, too wide to be any animal Elias had a name for. "Recently, within the week." "How can you tell?" "Because the birds haven't come back yet. They found the burial place an hour before dusk. A cairn of stones beside the canyon's warm spring, undisturbed, and the old man knelt beside it with a reverence that made Elias look away out of something like respect. What he unearthed was small. A woven bracelet, faded, child-sized, the kind of thing a mother ties around a wrist and never expects to outlive the wrist itself. "His from before he could walk," the old man said, voice raw in a way Elias hadn't heard from him yet. "It's enough. It has to be enough. They didn't make it back to the horses before the light failed entirely. It started as a wrongness in the quiet, the same wrongness Elias had felt 3 nights back. The wind carrying copper and wet stone, every small sound in the canyon going still at once. Then a shape moved along the canyon rim above them, too large, too deliberate, silhouetted black against a sky just beginning to show stars. "Don't run," the old man said, low and urgent, gripping Elias's arm hard enough to bruise. "Running is what prey does. Stand. Let him see you're not prey. That thing is your son. Tonight it is not anything I can call by that name." The old man's voice didn't waver, but his hand on Elias's arm was shaking badly enough that Elias could feel it through his sleeve. "Stand still, Mr. Ward, and pray he's not hungry yet." Above them, the shape on the ridge lifted its head, and somewhere in that motion, in the way the moonlight caught eyes that glowed amber and wrong, Elias understood he was looking for the first time at exactly what 3 days had been building toward, and that no rifle in his hands was going to matter at all if the old man's prayer went unanswered. The shape on the ridge didn't move for what felt like a full minute, and in that stillness Elias understood the old man's instruction had worked, or was working, or was buying them exactly as much time as prayer ever buys anyone. Then torchlight bloomed at the canyon mouth behind them, and 6 horses came through the narrow entrance at a hard trot, and Elias's stomach dropped clean through the canyon floor. Bragg had followed them. "Ward," Bragg's voice carried flat and hard off the canyon walls, rifle already unslung and resting easy across his saddle. "Not aimed, just present, the way a man carries a threat he hasn't decided to use yet. You rode 2 days out of your way for an old Apache man and a dead woman's grave. Something you want to explain?" "Bragg, you need to turn around now. I need to know why you lied to my face 3 nights back." Bragg's eyes moved past Elias to the ridge above, to the shape still standing there, and Elias watched the exact moment recognition and confusion crossed his face. The shape was too large, too wrong, too still to be a man, and too upright to be any wolf Bragg had ever hunted. "What in God's name is that?" "That," the old man said quietly, stepping forward, "is the reason you should have listened to the wind 3 nights ago instead of Mr. Ward's fence line." One of Bragg's men raised his rifle toward the ridge on reflex. The old man's hand shot out, gripping the barrel, forcing it down. "Don't get your hand off my rifle. If you fire on him now, wounded and cornered, he'll not run. He'll come down here, and he'll not be particular about which of us he takes first." The old man's voice was iron flat, the voice of a man who had buried this exact argument once already and had no patience left to bury it twice. "You want to live past tonight? You put the guns down and you let me finish what I came here to do." Bragg looked at Elias like he was searching for a lie to hold on to, some simpler explanation that didn't require believing an old man's impossible claim. He didn't find one. Above them, the shape on the ridge shifted its weight, and a low sound rolled down the canyon walls that silenced every argument at once. Not quite a growl, not quite a howl, something in between that every animal instinct in every man present recognized as a countdown. "Ward," Bragg said quieter now, "what do you need from us?" "Light," the old man answered before Elias could. Torches raised held steady a wall of fire between him and the boy's mother, if it comes to that. Nothing more. No rifles fired unless I fall. And if I fall, it will already be too late for shooting to matter. Bragg's men formed the line without another word. Torches lifted, and Elias understood he was watching something rare happen in real time. Men who'd ridden out that morning as hunters, becoming, in the space of one impossible sighting, something closer to a barricade. The shape came down off the ridge in a single controlled drop, closing the distance in a way that no man's legs could have managed. And in the torchlight, Elias finally saw him whole, the wrongly jointed height of him, the fur matted dark across a chest built too broad for any man's shoulders, amber eyes that held even now some terrible fragment of memory behind them. The old man walked toward that shape alone, unarmed but for the blade wrapped in cloth and the small woven bracelet held out flat on his open palm like an offering. "I know you," the old man said, voice breaking for the first time all night. "I know you're still in there somewhere. Look what I brought you." The creature stopped 3 strides away, went still. Its head lowered toward the bracelet in the old man's palm, and for one suspended moment, canyon and torchlight and every held breath around them seemed to hang on whether 3 years of running had led to this, recognition or ruin. Then it lunged. The lunge carried the old man backward off his feet, and for one terrible breath Elias thought it was already over, thought he was about to watch a father die inside the shape of his own son with nothing left to do but grieve it. But the creature didn't strike to kill. It struck to pin, one massive clawed hand closing around the old man's shoulder, holding him against the canyon floor while its head dropped low, snout inches from his face, breathing him in like it was searching for something underneath the fear smell and torch smoke. "Now, Ward," the old man gasped, one hand still closed, white-knuckled around the bracelet. "The blade. I can't reach it. I can't." Elias moved without deciding to. Later, he wouldn't remember crossing the distance, only the sudden closeness of the thing, the heat coming off it like a struck stove, the amber eyes swinging toward him with an attention that felt like being weighed. "Blood it," the old man said, voice thinning fast under the weight pinning him down. Against something that was his, the bracelet now. Elias's hands weren't steady, but they were fast. He drew the blade from his coat, pressed its dark edge against the small woven bracelet still clutched in the old man's fist, and felt something pass through the metal like current through wire. A shudder, a change, the black veins in the steel flaring bright for one instant before settling dark again. The creature above them went rigid. Its head snapped up, amber eyes wide, and the sound that came out of it wasn't animal at all. It was a man's voice, buried 3 years deep, tearing its way up through a throat that had forgotten how to make it. Papa. One word. Enough. The old man reached up with his free hand and pressed the blade gently, without violence, flat against the creature's chest, over the place a heart would sit in either shape. "I forgive you," he said. "I forgave you the night it happened. Come back to me now, just for a moment. That's all I'm asking." What followed happened fast and did not happen cleanly, a shudder running the length of the massive frame, fur and bone and grief all fighting the same losing battle at once, and Elias looked away, because some things a man witnesses are not his to keep. When he looked back, the moon had gone from full white to something duller behind a passing cloud, and the shape on the canyon floor had changed, smaller now, a man's shape, bare-chested, breathing hard. Alive. The old man held his son's face between both hands and wept without sound. And around them Bragg's men lowered their torches, one by one, none of them finding a single word equal to what they'd just watched happen. They didn't stay long. Dawn found them riding north, the sun wrapped in Elias's spare coat, too weak to speak beyond a few broken words, in a language Elias didn't know but understood the shape of anyway. "Thank you, maybe, or forgive me, or both at once." Bragg rode alongside them the whole way, quiet, rifle slung and forgotten, a man reckoning with something too large to fit inside the bounty paper folded in his saddlebag. At the Ward Ranch, the boy's mother came running from the barn before anyone dismounted, and whatever passed between her and the man she'd thought lost to the curse for 3 years was not for anyone else's eyes. Elias buried the blade himself 2 nights later, back near the same warm spring where the bracelet had waited 3 years for its purpose. He kept nothing from that night except one thing, a single fang, shed in the change, small and yellowed and heavier in his palm than its size accounted for. He never told anyone why he kept it. He wasn't entirely sure himself, except that some nights a man needs proof even privately, that the wind had been right to change that October evening, and that $10 had bought him something no amount of money could have measured beforehand. There are debts a man pays with money, and debts a man pays with everything else he has. Elias Ward learned the difference in the space of 5 nights, and he carried what he learned quietly for the rest of his life. Through droughts, through better years, through the slow forgetting that time does to everyone eventually. The fang stayed in a drawer in his kitchen table until the day he died, and his children never understood why their father kept a wolf's tooth wrapped in cloth beside his good silver, only that he wouldn't explain it, and they knew better than to ask twice. Some curses end in blood. This one ended instead in a father's forgiveness and a stranger's $10. Proof, if proof was ever needed, that the smallest kindnesses are sometimes the only thing standing between a man and the dark closing in around him. If this story stayed with you, subscribe for the next one. And tell me in the comments what country and city you're watching from tonight.